Hey, how's it going? It's Kale from Cubo Gaming. I'm back here with another buyer pass, and in these videos, basically, I talk about my own personal opinion and some objective viewpoints on the games that we're talking about to kind of help you decide on whether the game is worth buying or, maybe just passing on. And in this video, we're going to be talking about Vampyr. Honestly, Vampyr is a game that I have been watching for actually a couple of years now, and it always intrigued me, but I just got to play it recently. The game is centered around Dr. Reed, and basically he has his own moral code, but he's now a vampire. And you're placed in London around 1918 when the Spanish flu was rampant, so the game really does have a unique setting, and to be honest, this is a really hard concept to pull off, so basically we'll be looking at different aspects of the game to kind of decide on whether, they pulled it off. So I guess first I'll touch on the graphics and animations of the game. The graphics are decent. The game really isn't focused on that, so I don't really put too much weight into this category, but there were some strange textures on walls, like brick looked kind of weird, and I know that the doors kind of looked out of place, but at some points, the lighting really did shine through. I know sometimes I'd be walking through an alley and I'd see some water on the ground, and just seeing the moonlight shine off of that really did give the game kind of like a realism feel. But I also can't help but think that they could have done a little more with the lighting. The whole game is set at nighttime, so really they don't have sun rays to work with or anything like that, so they could have, they could have beefed up the moon and really made the nighttime really shine. But overall, the graphics are fine. And I do want to mention some of the character models. They're average. Dr. Reed looks great. The hair follicles on his beard looked really good. But some of the other characters, their mouth movements were a little strange and off-putting. But like I said, the game really isn't focused on graphics, so overall looks okay. I do want to mention that the blood animations are great. I mean, the game is really focused around blood. But one thing that I really do like is that when you're in combat and you start hitting the enemy, the blood splatter will splatter on objects around you, like the ground, and it really makes your attacks feel like they actually hurt. So that was a cool little detail that they put in there. And overall, I'd say the combat animations are really smooth and fluid, and I especially love the dodging in the game. I can't stress this enough. I love how the dodging is in this game. It works really well, and it feels super smooth and fluid. And all the special ability attack animations were really solid. So an element of the game that I really do have to talk about is the embracing. So basically when you embrace someone, you choose to kill that person and suck their blood and basically snuff out their storyline. And when you embrace someone, that does affect your story and your outcome. So it really does create this dilemma on, do I embrace this person or do I not? And what's really interesting is that you do get their XP from their blood, which can really level you up fast. And the more that you talk to that person and find out more about them, the more that their XP goes up. So the game rewards you for getting to know that person, but as you get to know that person, sometimes you may not want to embrace them because you like them. And sometimes when you embrace someone, that could have a domino effect and change your whole entire game. And I will say this, the game punishes you really bad if you embrace everyone in the game, so I recommend not doing that. But the embracing feature is so good in this game. This is what gave the game so much depth for me, because I had to make my own personal choices on who I was going to embrace or who I wasn't. And your character, Dr. Reed, is a doctor, so he has a moral code. But sometimes you want that extra XP. And this feature really did make the game for me, and I love that it was implemented and executed so well. And moving on, combat is actually a big part of this game, and it's pretty in-depth. So there's this whole fleshed out skill tree with all kinds of abilities, and they're all valid, which I love. Each one of them seems like there's a lot of time put into them, and it doesn't feel like it was just kind of thrown together like in some other games. Some of my favorite were the claw, which would allow you to do this really fast attack and do a lot of damage to a person, and you can upgrade that to maybe make it to where you can draw blood from them and grow your blood meter. Where there was the ultimate section, which I chose the beast one. This one would allow you to slow time and attack a lot of enemies that are near you. This one really helped because it allowed me to take some time to regen my stamina bar. And there's also biting in combat, which regens your blood meter. An element that I really liked about this game is that you can have an offhand weapon that would allow you to break down someone's shield bar, and then once their shield bar is down, it would allow an opening for you to bite them and take their blood. The skill tree was really interesting for me. All the options were great, and it really did change up the combat for me. You also have a decent variety of weapons, so basically you could have a one-handed weapon, two-handed weapon, offhand weapon, or one of the shotgun and pistols. This really grew on me because I was able to kind of mix and mash what I wanted, but I think there's enough options here for a lot of different playstyles. And there were a decent amount of enemies. There was the Scowls, which are kind of like the mutts of the vampire type. There was the Guard of Priwen. There were werewolves and vampires that had the same powers as you. Most of these categories had separate types of enemies within them, and there was a large variety of enemies, and all of them felt different and had their own difficulty level. I really enjoyed the variety of enemies here. And the combat overall was really great. So there was an issue where it would be kind of clunky when you would fight. For instance, when you would lock onto an enemy, sometimes it would be kind of glitchy and lock onto another one. Or I would dodge, and I would dodge in the direction that I wasn't really aiming for. So at times it can be a little clunky, but the skill tree and all the different options that you have really make up for it, and it made the combat extremely fun and kind of different than any other game that I've played. So while I'm on the topic of combat, we can get into the bosses in the game. So there is a variety of bosses in the game. Each boss felt different in their own way, and for me, the difficulty level was perfect. Hard enough to where I can get a little bit of a rage in, and easy enough to where I didn't want to stop playing. The soundtrack in this game is incredible. A lot of it is this really great solo cello. This is such a high level of composition, and the songs are so perfectly fitting. It really does show when a studio puts time into the soundtrack. So the soundtrack is top notch. So the map is basically split into 4 different districts and the additional sewer system. So first you have the docks, and this area really didn't interest me that much. It was kind of bland. The characters in there were semi-interesting, but honestly I didn't really put too much time into them. I really only went to this place if I had to for a story mission. Next you got the Pembroke Hospital, and I loved this area. This is basically your headquarters in the game, and I felt safe in this area. The characters were really interesting, and I found myself spending a lot of time in this place. I think this was a really good choice to have the headquarters in the game. Next we have Whitechapel, and this was a pretty good area. The characters were pretty interesting. I spent a lot of time here, and I found myself exploring this area to see if I can, find hints or, whatever else. But I'd say that overall, my favorite is West End. This area was developed so well. It flows really nicely, the characters are really interesting, and it's got this whole kind of backstory to it. I really enjoyed this area, and I almost wish that the devs kind of made the rest of the districts somewhat close to this. But yeah, I'd say that West End is definitely my favorite. And then you got the sewers. So the sewers didn't really interest me too much. Honestly, I kind of forgot about them, and I would only really use them if I had to for a story mission. Overall, the map really isn't too big, but it's really dense with story, and I think that's kind of the point. It's not meant to be this massive open world map. It's supposed to be these 4 districts that are really dense and have their own personalities to them. And I think that the devs really did a good job of separating each district and making each district kind of unique to their own people. And speaking of the people in the game, I have to mention the story. I'm going to be honest, I really enjoyed the story in this game. So basically, the game rewards you for talking to different people, and the choices you make affect your end game result. I got an ending that I was happy with, and I really invested a lot of time into the people in the game. Each person had their own identity, and they felt separate from the next. The main storyline is extremely interesting for me at least, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought it was good in the first half of the game, but the later half gets really, really interesting, and I think that this was a really well-fitting story for the game. Most of the story revolved around the pillar characters, so there's a character tree in Docks, Pembroke Hospital, Whitechapel, and West End. Each one of these characters has their own arc and their own social circle, and you also have a health meter for each district that you directly affect. So for instance, someone in that district could be sick, and whether you decide to heal them or not could affect the health of the district. And this just gives the game extreme depth. You don't have to talk to all these people, but the game really does a good job of making you want to talk to all these people. So the story overall was really intriguing, and I think that they did a really good job with it. So coming to a close, is Vampyr really worth buying? Yes, the game is really good. And aside from some clunky combat, the game is extremely in-depth. It gives you options, and it gives you basically control of your own destiny in the game. And a lot of other games have done this and do this, but I think this one has such a unique concept that it really sets itself apart. The combat is really solid, it's really different, there's a lot of options for you, and not only that, you control the health of the districts in the game of choosing whether or not you'll kill someone or keep them alive. And that's going to be it for this video. If you liked the video, a like and subscribe is always appreciated. Be sure to check out some of our other videos and links down below.